If we want to understand how Ethereum and Bitcoin differ, we have to go back to the beginning, to the moment a mysterious figure, known only as Satoshi Nakamoto, released a 9-page document that would quietly ignite one of the greatest technological shifts of the 21st century. The world had just stepped out of the shadow of the 2008 financial crisis. People were frustrated with banks too big to fail, with a system that required blind trust, and with money that governments could print endlessly. It was in this climate of doubt and uncertainty that Bitcoin was born, not as a company, not as a product, but as an idea. A radically simple, profoundly disruptive idea: money without a middleman. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that you could send value to anyone, anywhere on the planet, without needing a bank, a government, or an approval stamp. No account freezes, no borders, no bureaucracy, just pure, peer-to-peer digital cash powered by mathematics and code. That was Bitcoin's promise: the independence of personal wealth, secured not by institutions, but by cryptography and consensus. The first Bitcoin block, the Genesis block, was mined on January 3, 2009. Embedded in its code was a message, almost poetic in hindsight: the Times 03 Jan 2009 Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. It wasn't just a timestamp, it was a statement. A reminder of why Bitcoin existed and what it sought to solve. The traditional financial system had flaws, and Bitcoin was a response. It was open, transparent, deflationary, with a maximum supply of just 21 million coins, no more, no less. Like gold, except digital, divisible, and transferable at the speed of the internet. Bitcoin's design was intentionally minimalistic. It was not created to run apps, host games, or build economies of digital collectibles. It was designed with a single purpose: to be money. Not money controlled by any authority, but money that belongs to everyone and no one. Its blockchain was simple, elegant, and robust. An architecture where every new block required computational work to validate and secure transactions. This mechanism, now known as proof of work, made attacking the network expensive and defending it natural. Over time, people began comparing Bitcoin to gold, not only because of scarcity, but because of its role: a store of value, a shield against inflation, a safe haven in uncertain times. As the years passed, what began as an experiment started gaining believers. At first, it was just a handful of cypherpunks running nodes in dimly lit rooms. Then came miners, exchanges, entrepreneurs, and eventually fund managers, corporations, even governments. What once was traded for fun or for pizza became an asset millions of people now hold with conviction. The first real-world Bitcoin transaction was 10,000 BTC exchanged for 2 pizzas. Today, that story lives on not as a joke, but as a symbol of how new ideas often appear small, even laughable, before they reshape the world. Bitcoin grew slowly, then suddenly. It survived skepticism, crashes, regulatory pressure, media ridicule, and countless obituaries declaring it dead. Yet it continued to exist, block by block, halving by halving, like a heartbeat that refuses to stop. Every 10 minutes, a new block is added. Every day, miners secure the network. Every year, more people join. Bitcoin isn't just technology, it's a movement, a decentralized belief system rooted in financial autonomy. The community surrounding Bitcoin reflects its core philosophy: purity, simplicity, resilience. To many of its supporters, Bitcoin should remain unchanged, like a monument. They argue that money shouldn't evolve quickly. It should be rock solid, stable, secure. Gold didn't need upgrades. Why should digital gold? And that is what gave Bitcoin its identity. Not just as a cryptocurrency, but as a symbol, a form of digital wealth meant to endure. Something you hold the way ancient civilizations held gold bars in vaults beneath temples. Something you pass to the next generation. Something you trust precisely because there is no one to trust. But as Bitcoin grew, another question began to surface. If Bitcoin is digital gold, a store of value, hard money, an alternative to the traditional system, then what else could blockchain technology do? Could it be more than money? Could it power new applications, new contracts, new online worlds where agreements execute themselves without lawyers or paperwork? Could blockchain become more than a vault? Could it become a computer? The idea was intriguing, but Bitcoin was never meant to fill that role. Its design was conservative on purpose. It prioritized security over flexibility, immutability over innovation. To change Bitcoin is difficult by design, for better or worse. It is the bedrock of crypto: stable, predictable, trusted. but not easily modified. And so the stage was set for the next chapter. The world witnessed Bitcoin become a financial revolution, a digital gold that broke free from government control. Yet in the shadows, another vision was forming. A vision that believed blockchain could be more than a ledger of transactions. It could be a platform, a foundation, a global computer where anyone could build anything, from decentralized finance to digital art to entire virtual societies. This vision would soon take shape in the form of Ethereum. Bitcoin lit the flame. Ethereum would build the future around it. When Bitcoin first emerged, it introduced the world to the idea of trustless money, a financial system run not by banks but by code and consensus. Yet even as Bitcoin grew, even as people began to treat it as digital gold, there were those who saw something more inside the technology. They wondered, if a blockchain could store transactions securely, couldn't it also store instructions, agreements, rules? And if it could, what new worlds might it unlock? One of those visionaries was a young programmer named Vitalik Buterin. He was fascinated by Bitcoin, captivated by the elegance of its design. But he also felt that its potential was constrained by its narrow purpose. Bitcoin was like a calculator, brilliant at numbers, flawless at what it was built to do, but limited beyond that single function. Vitalik imagined a blockchain more like a computer, not just a ledger of payments, but a platform where developers could build any kind of decentralized application without asking permission from a company, a government, or even a single authority. And so in 2015, Ethereum was born, not as a rival to Bitcoin, but as an expansion of what blockchain could be. If Bitcoin was digital gold, Ethereum was like a programmable world, an open foundation for innovation. It introduced something revolutionary: smart contracts. These were more than code. They were digital agreements that executed themselves automatically when conditions were met. No bankers, no lawyers, no escrow service, just logic, transparent, unstoppable, living on chain. Smart contracts changed everything. Suddenly, money wasn't the only thing a blockchain could move. It could move ownership of digital art. It could determine voting rights inside a decentralized organization. It could lock tokens inside financial protocols to earn yield. It could power games, insurance systems, prediction markets, even virtual real estate. Ethereum wasn't a passive store of value. It was an active economy, one you could build inside. Developers from all corners of the world began experimenting. Projects sprouted like wildflowers, some destined to wither, others to reshape the digital landscape. Decentralized finance, DeFi, let people borrow, lend, and trade without banks. NFTs turned digital imagery into provable ownership. Stablecoins created bridges between crypto and traditional money. DAOs formed democratic communities that operated without CEOs or boardrooms. And the beauty was that no one needed permission to participate. Ethereum was permissionless by design. Every transaction, every smart contract interaction required gas, paid in ETH. That made ETH more than a currency. It was fuel, the energy that kept the global machine running. In Bitcoin, coins represented money. In Ethereum, ETH represented computation. The more people built, the more valuable the network became. And as the network grew, so did the demand for developers fluent in Solidity, the language of Ethereum smart contracts. Where Bitcoin felt like a fortress, strong, solid, back unchanging, Ethereum felt alive. It evolved. It adapted. Its community debated proposals, upgraded the network, and experimented constantly. While Bitcoin aimed to remain simple and incorruptible, Ethereum embraced complexity for the sake of creativity. One was conservative, the other progressive. One sought permanence, the other innovation. But innovation came with challenges. As Ethereum usage exploded, so did gas fees. A simple transaction could cost dollars, even hundreds during peak congestion. Scaling became a pressing problem, and so came solutions. Layer 2 networks like Arbitrum, Optimism, and zk-Sync rose to help handle the load. Ethereum planned major updates to become more efficient. While Bitcoin used proof of work, miners, and energy, Ethereum eventually transitioned to proof of stake, reducing energy consumption and increasing efficiency. Yet despite their differences, both Bitcoin and Ethereum earned places in the crypto universe. Bitcoin remained the anchor, a symbol of freedom and sound money. Ethereum became the engine, the foundation of Web3. To compare them directly is like comparing gold to the internet. They are both valuable, but in entirely different ways. Still, the story of Ethereum isn't just technical. It's social, cultural, philosophical. Bitcoin was born from distrust, a desire to escape centralized control. Ethereum was born from curiosity, from the belief that technology could empower creativity and collaboration. Bitcoin asked, how do we fix money? Ethereum asked, what can we build if money itself becomes programmable? And that question continues to unfold every day. A new generation of entrepreneurs now builds worlds inside Ethereum the way early pioneers built cities along rivers. Capital flows in, projects rise and fall. Some change the rules of finance, others push digital art into museums. Some dream of metaverses, others of autonomous future societies where code, not leaders, governs human collaboration. Ethereum opened a door that Bitcoin never intended to build, and once that door opened, it could not be closed. The infrastructure of Web3, the idea of ownership, identity, and community on the internet, found its home there. For developers, Ethereum is not merely a cryptocurrency. It is a toolbox, a playground, a blank canvas where imagination meets programmable trust. In Bitcoin, you hold coins. In Ethereum, you build worlds. But understanding these two giants is not about choosing one over the other. It's about recognizing their roles, their strengths, their philosophies. Bitcoin is the foundation of digital value. Ethereum is the foundation of digital innovation. And as we move forward, as new upgrades roll out and new use cases emerge, the difference in purpose becomes more pronounced. Bitcoin remains what it was always meant to be, a hard, scarce, censorship-resistant store of value. Ethereum continues to grow into something vast and fluid, an endless frontier of smart contracts and decentralized economies. In this way, Ethereum didn't compete with Bitcoin. It complemented it, and together they shaped the identity of the entire crypto ecosystem. Now that we understand Ethereum's vision, we can place it side by side with Bitcoin, two technologies born from the same soil of cryptography, yet branching into entirely different destinies. This takes us to the next chapter. Not just what each is, but why they differ so deeply at their core. To understand Bitcoin and Ethereum as two separate pillars rather than competitors, we need to step back and look at their foundations. Not the code, not the mechanics, not yet, but their purpose. Because purpose is where every other difference begins. It shapes the community, influences design decisions, and determines how each evolves over time. In the world of crypto, purpose becomes philosophy. Bitcoin was born as resistance, a quiet rebellion against central banks, inflation, and censorship. Its mission is simple and unwavering: to be money, sound, scarce, borderless money. Bitcoiners believe that money should not bend, should not update easily, should not reshape itself every time a trend arrives. Money is a bedrock, not a playground. Change it too often, and you weaken trust. Modify it freely, and you risk breaking what makes it valuable. Bitcoin's strength is in its simplicity. The fewer moving parts, the less can go wrong. In this philosophy, stability is security. Predictability is trust. Bitcoin stands like a lighthouse, constant, unshaken, reliable. Ethereum, on the other hand, was born from possibility. It didn't emerge from frustration, but from imagination. Where Bitcoin said, here is digital money, Ethereum said, what if money be programmable? What if anyone could build systems on top of a blockchain? Ethereum didn't position itself as a replacement for Bitcoin, but as a canvas for innovation. Its philosophy welcomes change. It embraces upgrades. It adapts to enable new ideas. Ethereum is fluid, where Bitcoin is rigid. Fertile soil, where Bitcoin is solid stone. And this fundamental difference, one of purpose, creates everything that follows. Let's imagine them as two inventions. Bitcoin is like the discovery of fire, primal, revolutionary, essential. It gives warmth, power, and security. Ethereum is like the invention of electricity, empowering, expandable, the foundation for thousands of future technologies. You don't compare fire and electricity to choose one. You understand that each changed the world in its own way. So too with Bitcoin and Ethereum. Where Bitcoin aims to be the safest and most trusted form of digital value, Ethereum aims to be the most useful digital infrastructure. Bitcoin owners hold coins with the belief that scarcity drives value. Ethereum owners hold ETH, knowing that its usefulness fuels demand. Bitcoin is the vault. Ethereum is the city built around the vault. This philosophical divide spills into their communities as well. Bitcoin's culture leans conservative, skeptical of rapid change. Its supporters value decentralization, security, and monetary hardness above all else. Many Bitcoin maximalists believe Bitcoin should not try to do everything, that trying to be too much risks losing what makes it special. Ethereum's culture is more experimental, open to risk, open to evolution. Developers propose new ideas with energy and creativity, where one side preserves, the other constructs. This is why, over time, the two blockchains have grown in diverging directions. Bitcoin perfected value storage. Ethereum became the foundation of decentralized applications. Bitcoin sought to be money for the internet age. Ethereum sought to be the operating system of Web3. But even philosophy is not the full story. Purpose shapes code, and code shapes behavior. The way Bitcoin works internally differs deeply from Ethereum. The way transactions are validated, the way blocks are mined or staked, the way each network scales, all reflect their core intent. Bitcoin prioritizes security over speed. Ethereum prioritizes flexibility over minimalism. Some see Bitcoin as a digital fortress. Others see Ethereum as a digital workshop. Neither is right or wrong. They are simply different answers to different questions. Bitcoin asks, how do we secure wealth outside traditional systems? Ethereum asks, what systems can we build once trust is encoded into software? Bitcoin imagines a future where individuals truly own their money. Ethereum imagines a future where individuals truly own the internet. And when you zoom out, you start to realize something important. They are not rivals, but complements. The more the world understands Bitcoin as sound money, the more it may use Ethereum to build decentralized services. The more Ethereum grows as an open economy, the more valuable Bitcoin becomes as a base asset many people want to store wealth in. Like yin and yang, the ecosystem is healthier because they are different. But knowing their purpose is only the beginning. To truly grasp the distinction, we must step deeper into the machinery that drives them. How do blocks get created? How do miners or validators secure the network? What trade-offs come from proof of work and proof of stake? Why does Bitcoin insist on one approach while Ethereum evolves through another? These questions lead us into the heart of their divergence, not just in spirit, but in structure. Because under the philosophy lies the technology, and it's there, in code and consensus, where we see the clearest line separating Bitcoin from Ethereum. What started as a difference in vision has become a difference in engineering. Now we step into that core. Next comes the technical contrast, the engines powering both networks, the choices behind them, and how those choices shape the future of crypto. Now that we've explored the philosophical roots of Bitcoin and Ethereum, it's time to descend into the machinery that keeps them alive. Because while their purposes set the direction, it is their technology that determines how far each can go. Under the hood, Bitcoin and Ethereum operate like two different engines, both powerful, both ingenious, but built for different terrains. Bitcoin runs on proof of work, POW, a system where miners, specialized computers, compete to solve cryptographic puzzles. Solving these puzzles is not a matter of luck. It requires real energy, real hardware, real cost. This is intentional. The requirement of computational work makes Bitcoin secure because attacking the network would demand enormous resources. To alter transaction history, an attacker would need to control more than half of the total mining power, a feat so expensive and impractical that it keeps the system safe. Proof of work transforms electricity into trust. Every 10 minutes, on average, a miner broadcasts a new block to the network, packed with transactions waiting to be confirmed. Once other miners verify it, the block becomes part of the blockchain, permanent, immutable, nearly impossible to change. This rhythm, steady, predictable, like a heartbeat, is core to Bitcoin's identity. Slow by design, secure by necessity. The trade-off is intentional, sacrificing speed to achieve maximum resilience. Ethereum began with the same proof-of-work mechanism, but its ambitions demanded more flexibility and scalability. As the network grew and smart contracts multiplied, congestion became inevitable. Gas fees surged, transactions slowed during peak demand. Ethereum was no longer just transferring Bitcoin-like payments. It was running decentralized finance, minting NFTs, powering complex protocols. It needed to evolve. So Ethereum embarked on one of the most ambitious blockchain upgrades in history. After years of research and testing, it transitioned to proof of stake, POS. Instead of miners, Ethereum now runs on validators, individuals who lock up ETH as collateral to verify blocks. The network selects validators to propose and approve blocks, rewarding them for honest work and penalizing malicious attempts. No mining farms, no energy arms race, just stake, software, and consensus. With proof of stake, Ethereum drastically reduced energy consumption, making it far more sustainable. Blocks arrive roughly every 12 seconds. Quick, fluid, responsive. The network became more efficient, and the transition opened doors for future scaling upgrades that Bitcoin intentionally avoids. But speed and flexibility come with trade-offs. Proof of work is battle-tested, hardened by time and energy. Proof of stake is newer, more complex, and some argue it shifts trust toward those with large holdings. Critics question whether POS networks can ever be as censorship-resistant as POW. Supporters argue POS is the evolution blockchain needs to scale for global use. The debate continues, but one thing is clear. POW and POS reflect two distinct priorities. Bitcoin prioritizes security and immutability. Ethereum prioritizes adaptability and performance. And their design choices ripple through every layer. Transaction speed differs. Bitcoin averages around 10 minutes per block. Ethereum processes blocks within seconds. Bitcoin handles simpler scripting, built for sending and holding value. Ethereum hosts entire applications, each with code that executes across thousands of nodes. Bitcoin has Lightning Network, an attempt to boost transaction throughput by moving small transfers off-chain. Ethereum has Layer 2 solutions, Arbitrum, Optimism, ZK rollups, improving scalability without compromising the main chain. Even the supply models diverge. Bitcoin has a fixed maximum, 21 million coins. Scarcity is sacred. Every 4 years, a halving event cuts block rewards in half, slowing supply issuance, increasing rarity. Ethereum has no fixed cap. Instead, its monetary policy adapts dynamically. With EIP 1559, a portion of every transaction fee is burned, reducing supply when activity is high. Some cycles even make ETH deflationary. Bitcoin is digital gold, precious because of its finite nature. Ethereum is digital oil, valuable because of its utility and demand. And the differences continue into architectural depth. Bitcoin's scripting language is deliberately limited to reduce attack surfaces. Ethereum's language, Solidity, is expressive and powerful, capable of creating decentralized exchanges, lending protocols, gaming worlds, and complex autonomous organizations. Bitcoin is minimal like a vault. Ethereum is modular like a city with endless construction. With each improvement, Ethereum moves toward a scalable global computing platform. With each halving, Bitcoin becomes harder money. They are diverging in function, but advancing side by side in purpose. One secures wealth. The other builds new systems for how wealth moves, interacts, and evolves. Technology is not neutral. It reflects the values of those who build it. Bitcoin believes trust must be earned through work, through energy, through time. Ethereum believes trust can be engineered through incentives, through coordination, through innovation. Neither belief is superior. Both have their place. The world needs resilient money, and it also needs programmable infrastructure. As we move through this technological landscape, we start to grasp the broader picture. Bitcoin and Ethereum are more than cryptocurrencies. They are two visions competing not against each other, but against the old systems they seek to transform. Together, they weave the early blueprint for a decentralized future. Now that we understand the engines that drive them, it's time to explore how these differences play out in the real world, how people use Bitcoin and Ethereum, how businesses integrate them, and how these networks shape industry beyond speculation. This leads us to what matters most to everyday users, their applications and impact. Technology is impressive, philosophy is inspiring, but the true measure of Bitcoin and Ethereum lies in what people actually do with them. The world doesn't adopt ideas, it adopts usefulness. And while both networks are built from code, their impact is felt in very different ways. To understand Bitcoin's role, imagine wealth as something fragile, constantly chipped away by inflation, manipulated by policies, restricted by borders. For decades, people stored value in gold, real estate, or stable government currencies. But gold is heavy and difficult to transport. Real estate lacks liquidity and requires trust in legal systems. Fiat money can be printed into worthlessness. Bitcoin emerged as a modern alternative, scarce like gold, borderless like information, and accessible to anyone with an internet connection. No permission required. For millions around the world, Bitcoin represents financial sovereignty, A person in an unstable economy can hold Bitcoin to protect savings from inflation. A worker can send funds across continents without remittance fees eating the paycheck. A protester can receive donations even if banks block their accounts. In countries where currency collapses, Argentina, Venezuela, Lebanon, Bitcoin isn't theory, it's survival. This is Bitcoin's power. It allows value to exist outside the reach of governments and financial intermediaries. Its simplicity is strength. It doesn't try to replace the entire financial system. It gives individuals a way out when the system fails. Meanwhile, Ethereum asks a different question. Not only how we store value, but how value flows. What if the global financial system wasn't run by banks, but by code? What if loans, trades, insurance contracts, and investment tools operated automatically, transparently, without walls or paperwork? This idea materialized into what we now call DeFi, decentralized finance. In DeFi, you can lend your crypto and earn interest without a bank. You can borrow without credit checks, trade assets on decentralized exchanges, stake tokens for rewards, or provide liquidity and earn fees. All controlled not by bankers, but by smart contracts, programs that execute agreements with mathematical precision. If Bitcoin is digital gold stored in a vault, Ethereum is Wall Street rebuilt on open source rails. Then came NFTs, which turned art, collectibles, music, in-game assets, anything digital, into provable, transferable ownership. For the first time, a digital item could be unique, scarce, authentic. Whether you love NFTs or roll your eyes at overpriced pixel art, the underlying concept is profound. Ownership in digital spaces became real. Creators gained direct relationships with fans. Artists sold work globally without galleries. Gamers earned tradable items they truly owned. And the experimentation didn't stop. DAOs began forming, decentralized autonomous organizations, where communities vote on decisions using tokens instead of relying on executives. Companies without CEOs, investment funds without managers, clubs without gatekeepers, governance by code. From stablecoins pegged to fiat currencies, to Web3 identity systems, to blockchain games and virtual land, Ethereum became a digital economy. Not speculative dreams, but working infrastructure used every day by millions. While Ethereum built an expanding universe of applications, Bitcoin kept refining its role as digital sound money. The Lightning Network allowed instant payments and microtransactions, making Bitcoin more practical for daily transactions. Merchants accepted Bitcoin for goods. Countries explored Bitcoin strategies. In 2021, El Salvador even declared Bitcoin legal tender, an experiment watched by the entire world. Not all nations will follow, but the message is clear. Bitcoin changed how we think about money. So which matters more, store of value or decentralized innovation? That question misses the point. They are two sides of the same coin, solving different problems. Bitcoin protects wealth. Ethereum mobilizes wealth. Bitcoin resists change. Ethereum thrives on it. Bitcoin is conservative, like a fortress guarding assets. Ethereum is dynamic, like a bustling marketplace of builders. In real-world usage, this means people often hold Bitcoin the way they hold gold or savings. Some never move it, just accumulate and wait. Ethereum, in contrast, circulates like fuel, flowing through protocols, contracts, trades. One asset sleeps like treasure. The other works like capital. And as both networks mature, their differences deepen rather than converge. Bitcoin's upgrades remain cautious. Few, deliberate. Ethereum's roadmap stretches forward. Sharding, rollups, scaling improvements, new execution environments. Bitcoin aims to be timeless. Ethereum aims to be transformative. Still, neither can replace the other. In the same way society needs both storehouses and marketplaces, crypto needs both Bitcoin and Ethereum. Investors hedge wealth in Bitcoin and participate in innovation through Ethereum. Businesses hold BTC as treasury reserves, while developers launch products on ETH. One represents safety, the other opportunity. Now, with 5 parts explored, only one remains. We have looked at history, philosophy, technology, and application. But the final perspective is human, personal, because at the end of the day, beyond analysis and facts, each of us forms our own relationship with these technologies. We decide what they mean to us. And that brings us to the last chapter, a moment of reflection. Not facts, but feeling. Not explanation, but meaning. After spending so much time exploring how Bitcoin and Ethereum differ, philosophically, technically, functionally, I find myself returning to a simple truth. These networks are more than lines of code. They are ideas. They are movements. They are mirrors reflecting how humanity imagines the future of value and freedom. When I look at Bitcoin, I see resilience. I see a system that refuses to compromise, even if that means evolving slowly, cautiously. I see a digital monument, unshaken by trends, unmoved by noise, protected by design. To me, Bitcoin feels like standing at the edge of a vast mountain, solid, ancient in spirit, something that will remain long after storms pass. There is comfort in its simplicity. No rulers, no promises, just math and time. It doesn't ask for trust, it demands understanding. And in a world where trust erodes too easily, that matters deeply. Ethereum, on the other hand, feels alive. It grows, adapts, reinvents itself like a city constantly under construction. Where Bitcoin invites holding, Ethereum invites building. Where Bitcoin represents preservation, Ethereum represents creation. It is chaotic, sometimes overwhelming, but also inspiring. Every new protocol, every developer experiment, every DAO vote reminds me that innovation is messy but necessary. Watching Ethereum evolve feels like watching the internet in its early days, full of possibility, mistakes, breakthroughs, and dreams. If Bitcoin is a shield, Ethereum is a canvas. One protects, the other enables. And I find beauty in both. Not as competitors waging war for dominance, but as companions shaping the digital economy in complementary ways. Sometimes I imagine a future where Bitcoin stands as a global reserve asset, borderless, beyond the reach of politics. People store their savings in it the way ancient civilizations stored gold in temples. Simultaneously, Ethereum hums in the background of daily life, powering financial systems, digital identities, ownership in virtual worlds, automated contracts that work while we sleep. The two don't replace one another. They coexist, each fulfilling a role the other cannot. Of course, I know the future is uncertain. Technology changes, narratives evolve. A new blockchain might emerge one day that challenges both. We must acknowledge risks, regulation, scalability, energy concerns, public sentiment. Not every dream will survive reality. And if any part of this analysis becomes outdated in the future, I hope we remember that this moment, right now, is only a chapter in a story still being written. But standing here in the present, with all the knowledge and context available today, I feel grateful. Bitcoin taught me to question the nature of money. Ethereum taught me to question the architecture of systems. Together, they showed me that value is not limited to what governments declare or banks maintain. Value can be defined by communities, encoded in protocol, secured by consensus. What excites me most is not the price charts or speculation, but the shift in thinking they create. A teenager in one country can deploy a smart contract that changes how people interact across the world. A refugee can cross borders with wealth stored in 12 words. Artists can earn from global audiences without intermediaries. These changes may seem subtle now, but like ripples on a lake, they grow. In the end, my perspective is simple. Bitcoin and Ethereum are different because they were never meant to be the same. One guards money, the other reinvents what money can do. And in their differences lies their power. As I reflect on everything we've explored, the history, the tech, the philosophy, the real-world use cases, I feel a quiet optimism. We are witnessing a transformation of value itself, not controlled by kings or corporations, but built by collective imagination. Whether we are investors, developers, or simply curious observers, we are participating in a chapter of financial evolution rarely experienced in a lifetime. And perhaps one day we'll look back and say, we were there when it began.